Welcome to this special explainer. Today, we're diving into a really profound and timely analysis on the intersection of advanced technology and global geopolitics. This is based on the comprehensive work of executive, entrepreneur, and author Nicholas Mitsakos. Look, as leaders across political, business, and technological spheres, we know we're navigating a landscape of absolutely unprecedented transformation. And Mitsakos argues that we're standing at a critical juncture right now, one that literally requires a completely new moral architecture to manage. So here is our roadmap of how we're going to calmly and reasonably unpack all of this. We'll start with Section 1, Industrializing the Human Crisis, then 2, Technology and Unprecedented Power, 3, The Economics of Destruction, 4, The Fragmentation Doctrine, 5, The Zero-Sum Illusion, and finally, 6, Building a Moral Architecture. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Industrializing the Human Crisis. Mitsakos actually anchors his entire analysis with this incredibly heavy thought delivered by Albert Camus back in 1947, right after the absolute devastation of World War II. Camus stood before an audience to issue a warning that the venom of the crisis had not just vanished because the war ended. We can't simply look away. We can't just say, well, I don't know. Civilization is answerable for its perversions just as surely as it is for its grand achievements. And that brings us to a rather stark observation by the author. Think about it. Nearly 80 years after Camus gave that warning, our technology is unrecognizable. The entire geography of global power has shifted. Yet, the essential human failure, it remains exactly the same. Our willingness to accept immense human suffering as a mere administrative variable hasn't been resolved at all. It's just become vastly more efficient. We have quite literally industrialized the crisis. Let's move to our second point and examine the tools amplifying this. Section 2, Technology and Unprecedented Power. The author outlines a pretty unavoidable historical reality here. Every single time we have a massive technological leap, it hands us a devastating bill that we consistently choose to ignore. The printing press democratized knowledge, sure, but it also ignited centuries of religious wars. The Industrial Revolution raised our living standards, yet it poisoned the air and displaced entire communities. Nuclear technology promised limitless energy, but it delivered Hiroshima. Today, we're looking right at artificial intelligence, and we are completely naive if we think it won't carry its own unpredictable compounding risks. Now, obviously, AI has the potential for enormous, truly miraculous benefits. Right now, it's identifying cancers that human experts miss, it's shrinking drug discovery from years down to months, and it's coordinating these incredibly complex disaster relief efforts. It is a breathtaking leap forward for us. But a tool is just a tool. That exact same underlying technology can generate targeted disinformation on an industrial scale. It can track dissidents with terrifying precision. It can coordinate lethal drone strikes. Historically speaking, power without accountability has a very troubling track record. Which brings us to the real-world consequences detailed in Section 3, the economics of destruction. So, the crucial point here is that technology has effectively democratized violence. War obviously isn't new, but the underlying economics of destruction have fundamentally changed. Today, things like precision munitions, autonomous systems, commercial satellite imagery, and honestly, even consumer-grade drones, they've drastically dropped the barrier to entry for large-scale harm. A non-state actor can now wield the kind of destructive power that required the vast resources of an entire nation-state just a generation ago. Technology has no conscience. We do. The catastrophic cost of unguided technology is not a technological failure, it's a human one. When civilian casualties just become a variable in a military calculus, we haven't actually become crueler than our grandparents, we've just become a lot more comfortable with the distance from the consequences. Now, let's explore how governments are failing to manage this dynamic in Section 4, the fragmentation doctrine. What's really interesting here is how Mitsakos defines this exact geopolitical retreat that we are seeing spread across the globe. Rather than leaning into cooperation, we're seeing a deliberate fragmentation. Nations are retreating into competing blocs, they're prioritizing this flawed vision of total self-sufficiency, and quickly redefining former economic partners as dangerous adversaries. Let's look at the relationship between the United States and China as a prime example of this. Not long ago, this was a relationship of deep integration that produced enormous mutual wealth, even with natural competition. Today, The posture has shifted almost entirely to containment and confrontation. The author argues that treating a civilization like China as an inherent enemy is a major strategic error. By attempting to cut them off, it actually accelerates their domestic technological development and forces them to build a counter-coalition. Misakos concludes that this approach isn't really a grand strategy at all. Actually, it's just fear, organized into policy. And the outcome of this global fragmentation, we see supply chains being decoupled in the name of security, which creates enormous economic costs. And those costs inevitably fall the heaviest on the most vulnerable global populations, the exact people who are least equipped to absorb them. This defensive posturing stems from a core misunderstanding, which we address in Section 5, the zero-sum illusion. As leaders, it is absolutely vital to recognize this fallacy. The zero-sum illusion is this populist belief that prosperity is just a fixed pie. You know, the idea that if one nation succeeds, another one inherently has to fail. The analysis points out that this mindset isn't just incorrect, it actively destroys wealth and creates misery. Prosperity actually expands through collaboration and shared knowledge. And this brilliantly illustrates that point. The development of the COVID-19 vaccine is perfect proof of how wealth and progress are actually generated. I mean, think about it. It utilized technology pioneered by a Turkish-German couple, it was developed at a German company, acquired by an American corporation, tested across multiple continents, and then distributed globally. True progress relies on accumulated human knowledge crossing physical borders. It simply doesn't respect the artificial barriers we're frantically trying to build. Which brings us to a profound realization. Intelligence, especially artificial intelligence, is infinitely and immediately replicable. It crosses borders at the speed of light. Yet as the source points out, we're attempting to contain this uncontainable intelligence using a 19th century mental model of competing nation-states fighting over physical territory. It is, according to the author, quite simply a civilizational failure of imagination. So what do we do about it? Let's move to our final section and look at the prescribed solution: building a moral architecture. The warning Misakos issues is very clear, but it comes with a vital, hopeful caveat. We are in the period right before the crisis. We aren't at the terminal point just yet. As executives, policymakers, and thought leaders, this means we still have the institutions, the communication channels, and the choices available to us right now to actually alter our trajectory. So, what do we owe each other as leaders? It really boils down to 3 key imperatives. First, we have to completely reject the zero-sum contest. Second, we must insist that vigorous competition and active partnership are not mutually exclusive. We can compete on trade while still maintaining critical dialogue. And third, we must demand strict accountability for new technological capabilities. We have to purposefully choose global universalism over the assumption of inevitable conflict. We absolutely have the capacity to find our way back to something worth calling civilization. But it requires genuine dialogue, and that doesn't necessarily mean agreement, but simply the willingness to speak and listen, treating those across the table with humanity rather than just as a cold calculation. I want to leave you with this final, stark question from the source to consider. Do we have the will to use dialogue before the next crisis that makes it necessary also makes it impossible? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.